John Dewey is a legend in civil rights in Florida, as was his wife, Patricia Stevens Dewey. And we're talking to John Dewey because he is here with us with a memory of things that just should be shared with us. And very, very few people can do what John can do. He was on the front line in the movement with his wife and others. And let's talk about that, John. How'd you get involved? What brought you to down to Tallahassee to jump into this? Give me the short version now. What brought you to Tallahassee? I don't need the whole romance and all that. But what made you come down? Explain how it was.
In 1934, when I was born in the state of Indiana, the state of Indiana was called a northern free state, which meant that it was free from slavery. But as I grew up in the state of Indiana, I began to realize that African Americans living in the state of Indiana were not really free, you know? And now, let me explain what the condition was in the state of Indiana. That the colored slaves of Graham were freed because they were good slaves to come north to the state of Indiana. And they established a community called Lyles Station near Evansville, Indiana.
But giving me too much information, John. I got to.
Okay.
I need to know how.
Because they were resented by the other whites in the community, they had to defend their property from assault. Now, I grew up with this story as a child. And as a consequence, my grandmother, when I was age of 5 years, told me, Johnny, you have to learn how to live. And she showed a picture of God in the Bible, who happened to be white. You have to learn how to live with God. So understand these conditions in Indiana. What happened in Florida with Patricia and the students at Florida A&M motivated me to come to the state of Florida to go to Florida A&M Law School because I was involved in civil rights in Indiana, but because of the militancy of the students of the student movement, I decided to leave Indiana and come to Florida, and I haven't gone back.
How did you know that students were militant in Florida? How did you get the message that Patricia and others were actually actively working towards civil rights in Florida? How did you get that information?
This was national news. National news of young African-American students leading the sit-in movement, the protest movement, getting arrested. Jet magazine, it was on TV and everything. And as I said, since some friends of Dr. Jenkins of A&M College of Law of Tallahassee motivated me to come on to Tallahassee. I decided to come on to Tallahassee.
Okay. So tell us what happened when you got there and how you got involved in the movement.
How about that picture in the back? What's that picture of?
That's Patricia leading the students in the demonstrations in the civil rights movement.
And that was before you knew her? Before you met her?
Anyway, that was before I knew her. In fact, I was barely in law school when I decided to go down to the courthouse, Dr. Dunn, to see the judge. And, you know, he invited me to represent Patricia. I'm just a law student at FAMU, you know? And I hadn't even met Patricia yet. But I said something to him. I think it's been my philosophy ever since, Dr. Dunn. If the movie theater in Tallahassee were desegregated, the students of Florida A&M would spend money and come to the theater, and everybody will be happy. And he released Patricia even before I met her, you know. So that's always been my strategy, Dr. Dunn, in relation to civil rights. Not just pursue the rights of Black folks, but pursue the interests of everybody that can benefit everybody to become the best they can be. Is that about right? I have to get confirmation by my assistant here. So that's the way it went, Dr.
All
Dunn.
right.
So you moved down.
Rabbi?
So you moved down to Florida, to Tallahassee,
Yes.
because you saw this woman and her, all the student demonstrators that
Yes.
were doing this work in the civil rights movement,
Exactly.
right? And you wanted to be a part of it.
Well, I want to be part of representing their interests.
Mhm.
I wasn't too interested in getting arrested myself. But
You were gonna be a lawyer, you were gonna get them out of jail. Your plan was not to
Damn
go to
right.
jail. Your plan was to get them out of jail.
Exactly, so that they
Did you ever go to jail, John?
done.
Were
Yeah.
you arrested?
No,
Were you-
I've never been arrested.
Never been arrested.
No,
I didn't know that.
that's right. Lawyers
I
don't
thought-
get arrested.
All right, that clarifies that. I'll let the rabbi get back to her question then. Thank you for clarifying that.
So now you're back, now you're in Tallahassee and it's 1960. And your role, you were still in school, in law school. You wanted to be representing these student activists, right?
Exactly.
And you ended up marrying this beautiful woman too, right?
Exactly right.
Boy,
Sure-
that's an amazing story in and of itself. So when
That's
you think back to that time with you were all under 30 years old, doughy-eyed, you wanted to conquer the world, you felt like you could make a difference. What was your main objective?
My main objective was trying to find ways to make the law to be the law. One of the things that Patricia always said, I am the law. And even when I was in law school, Dr. Dunn, I always gave my instructors hell because I always challenged them as to what the law is, not what it is written down. And there was only one professor who understood what my game was. His name was Professor Gibbs at the College of Law, Florida A&M. He is a nephew of Jonathan Clarkson.
Pete Gibbs, yes. All right.
Now, I did not know the history of Jonathan Clarkson Gibbs. And Rabbi, this is very serious because he was a Presbyterian. Now, as you know, in Miami, Reverend Irvin Elegant, and you remember Dr. Dunn, Reverend Irvin Elegant, he was also a Presbyterian at New Covenant Presbyterian Church. Now, when I came down to Tallahassee, I was active as a Unitarian Universalist. I think you knew this, Dr. Dunn. Although I was a member of the AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal Church, I knew that the AME Church was complicit in the slave trade of England because after the American Revolution, African Americans were not recognized as legal persons and could not incorporate their church to be a corporation. So they went to England to get their church incorporated, but it was a price. Now, under international law, the laws of the foreign state.
John, you're losing me.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'm just getting to the
You're
legal
losing
thing.
me.
But the
You're
point
losing me.
is, the English say, okay, yeah, we'll incorporate your butt, but we want you to be helpful and help us in the slave trade. And you know the rest of the story of the AME Church. Now, I learned this from Black Baptists when I was active in the civil rights movement later in the 60s. as to the story of the AME Church. Okay, I'm sorry.
So going back to Florida's role in the civil rights movement, talk
Mhm.
to us about the significance of that and your part and Patricia's.
Okay, I anticipated this question because you sent these questions to me earlier. Uh, Florida, as you know, is a very long state. There's a north, middle, and south. Florida was a critical player in the, I call it the freedom move, civil rights movement. Compared to the North Florida, Gaston County, that area, that was still the tradition of slavery, because that's where slavery and was part of the South in general. But Miami was different. South Florida was different. That was a composition of more than one ethnic group. It included Haitians, included Cubans, including Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans. This was a mixture of ethnic groups in Miami. It was not white, black as it was in North Florida. And this provided an opportunity for more liberal action to develop in the South Florida as compared to North Florida in Miami, in that area. And particularly to the Community Relations Board was an opportunity to get all these groups working together in community relations for the mutual benefit of the total community. And that was my honor in working with Dr. Gunn and others of that time in moving Florida ahead through the Community Relations Board.
So if I can interrupt you for a moment, because I think that's a little bit later in your story. I think it's important that we talk a little bit about the pre-Civil Rights
Okay.
Act and what was going on during that time up in Tallahassee where you were, right?
Yes.
So can you tell us, can you bring us back to those few years when you were there and what was going on? How instrumental were those student activists that you and Patricia were a part of?
Okay, well, as I arrived in Tallahassee, Florida, A&M University is a historical Black university, as you know, for a specific purpose, to serve African Americans, to be good African Americans, to benefit the total state of Florida. Now, when I arrived in Tallahassee, there was a fervor of the students involved in what we now call civil rights, led by Reverend C.K. Steele, who was pastor of the church. What's the name of the church? Or it doesn't make it, I can't think of him right now. But in a way, he was part of Dr. Martin Luther King's, Southern Christian Leadership Conference back in the late 50s. And they had a great impact in organizing the young people to get involved in the civil rights movement. And then CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality from New York, Carl Reichman and others came to Tallahassee to assist the students and to work as a partner with Southern Christian Leadership Conference with the young people there in Tallahassee. And that's where the freedom movement was about. The NAACP, CORE, and the SLC were working together as partners in Tallahassee back in the 60s.
Nice. And did you get a chance to meet Dr. King?
Of course, I got to see Dr. King and what's his name that just died?
John Lewis.
John Lewis.
Yeah.
John Lewis.
And John Lewis, yes, I got to work and see all of them. John Lewis was just a young kid when I knew him.
Mom was leading the students.
And Patricia, of course,
Was leading the students.
yes.
Where did you meet King?
Hmm?
Where did you meet Dr. King? Where?
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, I think it was July. I mean,
That's where he was. You know, he was all involved in the movement of St. Augustine. I don't think he came to Tallahassee, did he?
and I got a picture of him sitting with my dog Scout.
How did that happen? How did that happen?
Well, like I said, the movement was all over the state of Florida, you know. St. Augustine, Gainesville, Miami, you know. And when the movement got hot in St. Augustine, I went to assist Attorney Earl Johnson, who was an African-American attorney in Jacksonville. And I was, you know, his legal assistant. And so I handled those civil rights cases that involved, you know, Dr. King and his people and the students, along with the help of my dog Scout. You know, we took care of business.
So you were involved in St. Augustine in the same way that you were in Tallahassee,
Exactly.
serving as a lawyer to get people out of jail once
Exactly.
they were arrested.
Yeah,
You went
that's
to St. Augustine
became
because
a member of
King,
the Florida Bar in 1963. Yes.
and King was in St. Augustine in '64, so you were legally able to practice law by that time.
Exactly. And, you know, because, you know, Earl Johnson needed to make some money, you know, so he let me do all the civil rights work.
I love it. So speaking about the movement in Florida, and there were all these different players that you were beginning to mention, I'm wondering what the relationship was from your perspective with the Blacks and the Jewish community.
Okay. The Jewish community, relationship between the Jewish community and the Black community was not all of that close as it should be because of their separate histories. Number one, most Blacks were Christians, and they were miseducated that the Jews killed Jesus. So there was always that underlying prejudice by many Black Americans against the Jews, because they're Judas, they are the killers of Jesus. And this is part of a history that goes back 1,000 years between the Protestants and the Catholics and the Jews, you know, like go even before African Americans were ever around. But this assimilated in history to the condition that even back in the 60s, there was a little tension between Blacks and Jews in the civil rights movement.
And so was it Abraham Joshua Heschel in your mind that kind of cracked that relationship open?
He made an attempt, but it always continued. Even when Patricia and I was represented by Tobias Simon and many of the Jewish attorneys in the civil rights movement, nevertheless, there was that unconscious problem that both had, you know, with each other. So it wasn't all that good as it should be, but it was there. That tension was there, and probably still exists today, you know.
With that in mind, how were they able to be instrumental in the civil rights movement? From what I understand, there was a lot of Jewish involvement, not only Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, but a number of Jewish leaders that really stood by and voiced, were very outspoken in the civil rights.
I really gonna recommend this book, Freedom in the Family, because I have a whole list of Jews who were very active in the freedom movement in this book that Patricia and Sonali Reed wrote called Freedom in the Family, which document about 80 critical Jews who helped us in the civil rights movement. So you are
Who were some of those, John? Who were some of them that come to mind?
Tobias Simon.
I know him.
All right. Herbert Heiken. You
What did he
remember
do?
that name?
No.
All right. Okay. You don't want me to get my book out, do you?
No.
No.
Okay, just talk. No, don't do
Hey,
that.
hey, Doctor, how old are you? How old are you?
80. You asking me?
Wait till you're 85.
86.
86.
But you know, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that there were these tensions, and they still do exist to some degree today. But you know, the Jews were there when others were not willing to come forward and provide legal support.
Yeah,
and
because
what have
they
you.
have a history of oppression, being oppressed. And they knew what this was about. Actually, it was their self-interest. We better help these black folks because we're next. You know, it's simple as that.
Well,
So,
the largest arrest of rabbis in U.S. history took place during the movement in St. Augustine when Dr. King was there. They arrested a whole bunch of rabbis who were there.
they're
to
right.
help out.
Exactly. Because they knew for their self-interest, it's important that we try to take hold of this thing because we're next. Because, hey, the Holocaust is real, my brother. You know what I'm talking about? So it was important.
Do they have a influence that you may not have been able to do on your own?
Oh, yes. Tobias Simon and all the other Jewish attorneys were well prepared in the law and how to use the law to reform the law. So they were very effective in assisting, Reverend Steele and the rest of us and the students in civil rights, moving the agenda. But civil rights, yes, they were very critical and important. And I use the word critical because without them, we would not have been able to move as we did.
Do you remember the feeling when the Civil Rights Act passed, how you felt at that time? Was there tremendous joy and relief?
I have mixed emotions.
Tell me.
Okay, my mixed emotions is this, because I know, since I'm a lawyer, I know how it is. It is one thing about Mr. Trump. He's right when he said it is what it is. And what I mean by that, yay, we got a civil rights law now. The one. Number two is enforcing the doggone thing. And I knew that was going to be a problem, enforcing civil rights, because you need resources and political power to enforce law. It's always been the case, because if you don't have the political power to enforce the law, it's not going to be enforced, it's going to be corrupted. And that is a word we need to understand what that means, corrupt. What we think is right will be corrupted, and therefore it will be destroyed.
Well, you're right about the Civil Rights Act not being enforced in the way that it was intended to be enforced.
Yes,
and certainly just a few years after the act was passed, we had a new change in Washington, and they began chipping away at some of the benefits that the movement had achieved.
That's what I mean by corruption.
You know, Dr. King was in St. Augustine when that bill was signed.
Yes, actually.
He was in St. Augustine as a part of the movement at that moment.
Now, Dr. John, you were at FIU, right?
Yes. Yes. I retired from there, yes.
I know, but as I saw your mission at Florida International University was try to educate people,
Well, yeah, John, but I'm not a civil rights icon. You are. And I did my academic stuff that I could. We're here to talk about what you did, not what I tried to do.
But civil rights doesn't mean a doggone thing with with a personality like Dr. Dunn. See, I can say what the law ought to be, but it's up to you to help teach children what they have to do to make the law to be what it ought to be.
As you've reminded me many times.
Well, one of the things that Patricia and I did is that we would stop at the Human Resource Center in Coconut Grove in Miami to meet with the policemen, and we would walk the streets together, there in Coconut Grove, so
Yeah.
the whole community could see John Doe and Patricia and the police walking together the beat.
Wow.
Now, this was important to show that what we meant by community-oriented policing. And I think that kind of model ought to be the model today. That it's not police versus the community, it ought to be police with the community.
Yeah.
And that's what community-oriented policing means, that we are here to help everybody to be safe.
Yeah.
So it's funny that 40 years later, this model still needs to be carried out,
Going back to Janet Reno, she worked with the local NAACP, churches, and rabbis around community-oriented policing.
Exactly, yeah.
And that became a model for what she launched in
Exactly.
in the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Exactly, which I still consider ought to be the politics of today. In other words, what I'm trying to say, rather than talking about defunding the police, we ought to refund the police for a different purpose, which is community-oriented policing involving the community.
When I'm thinking back on just a few days ago when we saw people storming the Capitol and we saw a Confederate flag flying and we saw white supremacists, chanting. I had never experienced anything like that. This may be bringing back memories for you of a dark time in history, but for us and my generation and those younger, it was a very shocking moment for us to see the hate and the virulent sentiments of a large number of people in this nation. And I guess what I'm asking you is, thinking 60 years ago and looking at the arc of where we've come in this time, where do you see us? Have we made any progress?
Yeah, we made some progress, but not as much progress we ought to make. And there's always a danger that we can reverse to the problem of the past. And this, now, in preparing for this discussion, I've been thinking about these questions that you're talking about, and think about the young people, that were shot and killed, John Lewis and what have you. What is it in the personality of a human being, Dr. Dunn, that causes people to be so crazy? What causes them to be so insane? What causes them to believe in an alternative reality? And this is why I would like to share with you my interests. Patricia and I were blessed that some white reformers enabled Patricia and I to enroll my children when they were 4 and 5 years old in a Montessori school. What I'm saying, Dr. Dunn, as much as you are successful in educating people at FIU, you can't start there. You have to work with children even before they go to school. My aunt, Edith, when I was 5 years old, gave me a cherry pie to take to a neighbor across the street who was white, who was very hostile towards Black folks. And she said, Johnny, take this cherry pie. And said, just give it to him. So I took it over to there. He opened the door. He said, my Aunt Edith told me to give this cherry pie to you. He took the cherry pie. He didn't say a word, but he took the cherry pie and shut the door. My Aunt Edith was trying to teach me that I had learned how to live with these sick
How to
Black
be
people
safe.
and how to be safe. That is the way to be safe. And this has been my mission all my life. Civil rights is not just trying to get civil rights for Blacks or for Jews, but to be safe and for America to be safe. And that's why I continue to push when I talk with our students. You have to learn how to be safe in America. All right, Dr. Dunn, are you safe?
Well, I don't know, John, just the other day, the Congress itself was not safe in our country. About getting at some of that hurt that we're all feeling.
We need to help these sick people, Dr. Dunn.
Well, I'll tell you something, since this has come up. I was around for the movement too. I was not active as you were. Rather, I don't think anybody in the country has ever seen anything like this. But this is all new for everybody. Those who were involved in the civil rights movement, I don't think could imagine racists charging into the Congress to kill people. So this is a new experience for America. But
with automatic rifles.
Yeah, but it does grow out of the same thing that John is talking about, unresolved racial tensions that in this country that we just have not resolved. Maybe we will now.
It's not over.
I don't think so either, John.
Hardly. And it saddens me to think that we have to educate for safety and protection rather than justice, equality, love, respect, dignity. I would think that in this day and age, in the 21st century, we would be closer to that. And honestly, I feel like a lot of our innocence has been stripped away. A lot of hate and anger that's been maybe suppressed all these years, it hasn't been addressed. It hasn't we haven't healed. We haven't faced it. We haven't confronted the ills of our past.
I know.
And
I think what maybe, I'm sorry, Rabbi, I was just going to say, maybe the point John was making earlier about when the Civil Rights Bill was passed in '65, people thought, well, that's it. Race relations have been taken care of. And I think you're right. We thought we had dealt with some things that we did not deal with. And this event of the last few days shows just how deep those unresolved feelings of racism in our country really do run.
Yeah, in preparing for this discussion, I look at the human animal. We're blessed and at the same time cursed. We're blessed to have a mind to reason, but at the same time, that mind allows us to be stupid. We're not programmed like other animals to survive. We at all times at risk of destroying ourselves. No other animal is in that condition of destroying themselves. And that's why I keep going back to Jonathan Gibbs. Dr. Dunn, when I was about ready to graduate from Florida A&M University, Gibbs took me aside. He said, John Dew, your classmate. He said, Edward Rogers. You remember that name, Edward Rogers? He said,
No.
yeah, Edward Rogers is going to become a judge. He writes short answers to questions, and his decisions will never be reversed. In your class, there's another superstar, Alcee Hastings. You remember that name?
Yes, I remember LC.
Alcee Hastings.
Federal judge and a congressman from South.
That's right. He's going to become a congressman. Now, John Dew, let's look at your answers to these questions. See how long they are. But they are right. Now, you're going to have trouble in life in moving your answers. Benny smiled. Good luck. Now, as I said, I didn't know who the hell this Gibbs was, but he was a nephew of Jonathan Clarkson Gibbs. What I'm trying to say, everybody, humankind and humanity is in trouble as the human monkey. However, there's hope if we use our mind to become the best we can be. And it's always going to be a struggle in life to develop a self, a new self, to live to be the best we can be. So, hey, I'm happy. I'm glad I've been able to do what I was able to do in the freedom movement. And I'm glad I have grandchildren that's going to carry on. I asked my grandson, Jackson Willoughby, would he live by? And there's a song he likes by John Legend. All of me to all of you, all of you to all of me. Now, that was about, of course, he had to make some money. It was about his girlfriend, you know. But my grandson made that statement saying that is our future. We have to see ourselves in the other person, the other person in ourselves. And that way, all of me and all of you, all of me. And I'm so glad I have some grandchildren that understand that, Dr. Don. And
I wish mine did.
and so we can move
working
on.
on it with them.
That's
They don't have the gift of a granddad who did as much as you did in the movement.
It reminds me of a Jewish teaching that we share with our children and with our communities, and we say that everybody is made B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And
That's
so,
right.
if we can see each other, that we are all made of the same, that we are all made in the image of God.
We're all one person.
Yeah,
Right.
John.
Yes.
I want to close by saying, sharing a quotation that I saw that you had shared some years back. You said, the freedom movement was about raising up everybody to be all they can be.
That's right.
That's the only thing that will save us from this insanity and human destruction.
Did I say that?
LOVE, the art of love. And I thought that was such a beautiful, human, emotional message that we needed right now, that it's a good reminder for us that we all have the capacity for unlimited love.
All right.
And that if we can just learn how to share that and see each other, that we're all made B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, and that we can love each other, even
That's
if
right.
we are different, that is a beautiful message to end with. And
Right.
we are just so grateful that you could share this time with us, and for all of your years of fighting for a just cause, for a better world in which to live in. And I hope that you will be able to see in your day,
That's
and
right.
it shouldn't be so far off, a brighter future for your children and your grandchildren, and for all of us, that we need that in this world. Wednesday's actions were so horrific, that it's hard to see the hope, but I'll keep with the hope that you left us with, and that is that we all have the capacity to
That's
do
right.
good, to be good, to treat each other with dignity and kindness, and
Right.
I'll hold on to that. If we
That's
can all teach that, then maybe there will be a better tomorrow.
Hey,
Well
have
said,
hope
John.
and keep hope alive. Freedom is not free.
I
All right,
bless
that's-
you, my friend, my new friend. I bless you in this year of health and strength and continued vigor, that you can continue to share and teach all of us those important lessons of love and humanity and dignity. So
Thank you.
All right, John.
All right.
See you,
Thank-
man.
All
Take
right,
it easy.
Send me
Freedom
the-
is not free.
All right, freedom is not
John
free.
says it all the time. Freedom is not free, and it's not.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
John.
everybody. And
Okay.
congratulations, Rabbi. I'm glad to see a Jewish lady as a rabbi.
Thank you. I'll
Thank
keep
you for
moving.
having This community.
I hope that we'll get a
All right.
chance to see each other in person one day soon.
Okay, thank you.
All righty.
Okay.
God bless. Thank
All right.
you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Janina.
Janita.